Curiosity is a privilege of safety. We have this extreme view, this side, anything in between we don't talk about. We automatically hate the other one. We automatically think the other one's dumb, whatever. If survival is your mechanism, you don't have room for nuance. The angry, uninformed voices are louder. This is not just a people battle. This is like a systems and organizational level battle. Hello and welcome back to the Wonder in the Weeds show. I'm your host, Christy Ritz-King, and I am by myself today on the couch. My Gen Z co-host is not here today. She is off pursuing her dreams of live theater. So we will be back with more episodes, I promise, when her rehearsal schedule loosens up a little bit. So today's weeds are kind of weeds. They're sort of global weeds, but for me personally, what I am frustrated with and sort of navigating right now, I will call it sort of lack of nuance or lack of curiosity, like the absence of curiosity in today's world in America, not the rest of the world. I can only speak for us as a country, sadly. I'll tell you what's been going on. So it seems like every political podcast, every story I listen to, every news forum I see, we have this extreme view, this side, anything in between we don't talk about. We automatically hate the other one. We automatically think the other one's dumb, whatever. What frustrates me is that I watch these things and I think every single time I say to my husband, like, don't these people over here that are saying things that seem crazy to me, don't they have the same sources of information that I have? But actually what my brain is thinking is, well, they can't possibly have these, because some of the stuff I'm hearing is so outlandish and so out of left field that I think they can't possibly be seeing and knowing the same things that I'm seeing and knowing, because there's no way they'd think this way if possible. You know, right now there's like a Senate race in Texas with a guy who's literally a convicted criminal and has just done really horrible things. And it's sort of understood that he's done really horrible things. And yet still somehow he won a primary. So my heart and brain can't accept that the people who voted for him know the horrible things he did and don't care. I know there's plenty of people out there who think, oh yeah, these people know the horrible things and they don't care. I get that. We have a president that we all knew the horrible things, and yet somehow we still elected him. So I understand those people. But I personally just can't sort of get behind the fact that people are evil or people are dumb. I always have to think and justify in my own head, I clearly don't have the same information. But I am frustrated right now with the idea that they're just willing to accept things as true without asking some questions, being a little curious, wondering why things are so divided and separate. For instance, the other day, I saw a clip. There are protests right now. I don't know the name of the facility, but there is a facility in New Jersey that is being used as an ICE detention center, and the people inside of it were on a hunger strike. And so therefore people were there, elected officials who have a right to go in and have oversight over the facilities, were not being allowed in. People were being arrested for protesting. People were, again, it's not black and white. It's always hard to know exactly what people were doing, but it seems like law enforcement was a little bit they were overstepping. And certainly in the case of not letting elected officials in for oversight, they should be able to get in. And I saw a clip of a guy, there was a guy, sort of a Substack reporter, I guess. I don't know that everybody's a reporter. They still call themselves reporters now, but it was a guy with a camera and a microphone interviewing people that were there. And this man that was being interviewed was so angry and so, I don't know, in my opinion, unwilling to hear anything. He was just railing away at everybody who was daring to protest, everybody who was daring to say that this was wrong, because that building only contained murderers and rapists and, every other kind of terrible criminal that you could imagine. And so why would we be against the deportation of those people? If we didn't like it, we should leave too, was basically his message. And all I could think was, okay, I suppose if the information you have is that inside that building is nothing but criminals, why are we protesting? Sure, that is a valid opinion of you to have. Like, they're doing the right job. These are all criminals and they're getting rid of all the criminals. But this man was standing directly in the face of hundreds, if not thousands, of people protesting the exact opposite of what he was saying. They were telling him, no, actually, the facts are that building is full of families, children, parents, people who were just trying to get a better life for themselves, people who were doing it, quote unquote, the right way, people who were here and had gone through all the paperwork and were doing all the things and showed up at court and ended up in a detention facility. Like, they were telling him the truth of the situation, and still he thought they're wrong, I guess is what he thought. They're misinformed. They don't know. I guess that's what he was thinking. But like, there are hundreds, if not thousands of people who are saying that what you are saying is wrong. How does it not occur to this man to maybe stop for a second and go, oh, is there information I don't have? Is there something I don't know? Is there nuance to this that I'm unaware of? Again, I want to stress the fact that this was one guy in a protest of hundreds of thousands, if not thousands. And I recognize that it's shown to me on the internet algorithm, or I think I even saw it. I was like looking for news, so it wasn't like it just popped up. It's shown to me because exactly it's eliciting the exact kind of response that the internet loves, which is my rage and my, like disbelief that this is a real person and my full contradiction to him. And I'll be completely honest, my reaction of dislike and disgust at him as a human being. I know that's the point. It's designed for that. I'm supposed to not like him. I'm supposed to hate him. I'm supposed to think that he's the problem instead of the government wheels that are turning that are actually causing all of this problem. They would really rather me think this little guy on the street in Jersey is the problem and not the machine that is creating the chaos to begin with. So I recognize that fully. And still, I have to think, how are we all so easily manipulated? How are we all so easily led by this? I also want to recognize that largely this is probably just on the internet, and not that this guy doesn't exist and not that this isn't actually happening, but that like there was one of him screaming into a camera versus hundreds and if not thousands of protesters on the opposite end. So I can recognize, like, in real life, this frustration that I'm about to talk about is probably not as big as it appears on the internet. You know that, like, when you're in a car and things are closer than they appear in your mirror, I feel like sometimes we have an opinion of the way the country's going based on what we're seeing on social media or the internet or in news sources that are, at this point, who can trust any of them anymore? Versus like when we get out into the world and talk to people and actually have conversations and show up at those protests and see how many other people there are, or showed up at voting booths or show up at, rallies or things like that. So I recognize that what I'm about to talk about is is somewhat manufactured by the algorithm, but I still want to talk about it because I do think it's a problem, and I do think it maybe was the seed of how we got here to begin with. And that is this sort of lack of curiosity and lack of nuance or inability to sort of sit in the nuance and sit in the discomfort. And so I'm going to put my little trauma therapist hat on and tell you that I think the antidote to all this is curiosity, is having the ability to stop and say, like, wait a minute, I feel this thing, I think this thing, but I'm looking at all of this evidence to the contrary. So I need to sit with this for a minute and try to understand where I'm coming from, where they're coming from, and somewhere where the sort of logic is in the middle, or the real truth is in the middle. If I relate that Jersey story to not Dilley, because that's the one in Texas, but Whipple, the one in Minnesota, that building, there were, again, hundreds, if not thousands of people outside of that building every single day protesting. Almost, I never saw or heard of very many counter protests. So I think, meaning people largely didn't show up if they agreed with the people inside the building, and the people inside the building, the quote unquote law enforcement inside the building. I refuse to even refer to them as real law enforcement, but the ICE agents and the Homeland Security people inside the building would occasionally come out and harass the protesters and get in the way and rough people up a little bit and do that kind of stuff. But largely the protesters just protested. And so there wasn't a lot of counter, a couple like YouTube guys showed up every once in a while to try to start stuff and it never worked. But I have to think the reason for that is because if they did show up and they saw the hundreds and thousands of other people, it might give them pause to be like, "Ooh, are we on the right side of this thing? Maybe we need to ask some questions or dig around a little bit or be curious about what it is that we believe and we came here and feel so strongly about it." Yes, this guy showed up in Jersey, but I feel like maybe he was one of few. And that is to sort of prove my point that like maybe this isn't as big and bad as this meaning the disparity between what most people believe is going on inside those buildings and what other people who support, quote unquote, support that believe. Maybe it's not as big as we think because it makes the news. It's like shark bites. My husband always says like, the reason we know about people getting bit by sharks is because it happens so infrequently that they cover it every time it happens. And so I sort of think that like we're seeing the people who are supporting this like death and destruction at the hands of government officials. We're seeing them because they're so infrequent that they're newsworthy. Versus the protesters, like there's probably some of you listening to this that don't even know that there were protests happening in New Jersey because it didn't make the news like Minneapolis. No one's dead yet. So I guess we can be happy about that. No one was shot in the street in New Jersey yet. Notice I say yet. So you maybe haven't heard about it yet. But that doesn't mean it's not happening. And that doesn't mean it's not a massive problem. And it also goes to the fact that like, if you haven't even heard of it, that might explain why some people think the way they do because they're not even getting this information to begin with. So back to curiosity. Because my point with talking about the Whipple building is if I showed up as a counter protester at the Whipple building and I showed up and there's 5 of me, me and 4 friends show up to say like, we're here in support of Homeland Security and ICE wreaking havoc in the streets. And I saw the hundreds, if not thousands of protesters outside doing the opposite. I might think to myself, oh boy, I think maybe I'm not doing this right. And I wonder now, sitting here as Christy, the trauma therapist, why isn't that happening more often? Why aren't more people saying this thing that I believe so strongly, that I've been told to believe so strongly, seems to be flying in the face of a whole lot of other people? So why am I not? What's really going on? For instance, if you supported this president and also you're paying $6 a gallon for gas right now, and because he went to a war that was completely unnecessary, are you not wondering like, maybe I shouldn't have believed him. Maybe I've been led to believe things that aren't really true. Maybe I was fed a bill of goods. If you're not wondering that, I, as the trauma therapist, am a little suspicious, and not suspicious in a bad way, but like curious in a bad way. Like, why aren't you more curious? Why isn't the world more curious? Why aren't we asking more questions? We hear a lot about doing your own research and finding out the answers and, don't trust people, the deep state and all this other stuff. And I can't help but think, again, putting on my therapist hat, curiosity and the basic idea of being able to ask questions and dig in a little deeper to things. That is actually like a safe privilege. So if you are in a situation where survival is the key, whether that's in your childhood, in your adulthood, in a dangerous household, in a dangerous town, city, country, war-torn area, whatever. If survival is your mechanism, you don't have room for nuance. You don't have room for curiosity. Your instincts take over, and that instinct is to A, be on the lookout for danger, and B, do what you need to do to protect yourself from that danger. My theory is that over the last 10 years, increasingly, parts of this country have felt more and more like that chaotic situation of all I need to do is survive. All I need to do is look out for danger, which then makes everything look like danger and makes everything look like something you need to protect yourself from. There's not a lot of room for curiosity there. There's not a lot of room for contemplation. There's not a lot of room for seeing all sides. We had a global pandemic. Millions of people died globally. That's chaos. That maybe pushed us all into that space of not knowing and not trusting and being on the lookout for danger and not leaving room for nuance, not leaving space for curiosity, not feeling like we could leave space for curiosity. And so when you're there, when you're in that survival mode, your body, your nervous system, your conscience, whatever, however you want to simplify it, reacts in a way that protects you. So you are again, on the lookout for danger and learning and exercising the behaviors to protect yourself from whatever danger lies ahead. When you get out of that, when you're living in a time of a little more peace, which maybe not be right this second, but relatively speaking. So for example, Minnesotans, ICE is not gone. They are still wreaking havoc on our towns, but not in the same kind of giant way that they did in January. So relatively speaking, there's a little more peace, meaning you could probably walk down the street. Your kids can probably walk to school without being in fear for their lives. So if you've been there, if you've just come from this chaos, from this sort of war-torn town, is what it felt like, to now having a little bit more relative peace, your nervous system isn't fully adjusted yet. And therefore, when it gets a glimpse of something that feels like danger, even if it's not danger, even if it's just like dissent, you may not have the space to react with curiosity and with openness to sort of look for the nuance of things. You might just automatically be in a defensive posture. And so my theory then is that as a country, a lot of us are in that defensive posture. We're in that post-chaos like trauma response, even if we're feeling a little more peaceful or we have a little more peace around us. We're not in physical danger anymore. We're not in harm's way anymore on a daily basis. And yet we still feel that way in a lot of cases. And so that precludes us from being more curious or asking more questions or not being so defensive in the moment. Like there is discomfort in growth and evolution that is normal. And oftentimes, if we've just come out of a chaotic situation or if we have a history of chaos and trauma, we can misinterpret that discomfort of growth and evolution as danger and protect ourselves from it rather than be open to sitting in it a little until we can contemplate and work things out. Curiosity by nature is something that we practice in the safety. It exists in that discomfort of growth. It's a privilege to be curious. It's a privilege to dig a little deeper. It's a privilege to look for more answers. And I say privilege because it exists in safety. You can pursue more and greater and in depth if you feel okay being a little uncomfortable in the unknown. If that little uncomfortable feeling, your body hears and is triggered into thinking it's danger, then it's nearly impossible to be curious and to ask more and to see the gray, to exist in the gray. So I think some of the reason, and look, I'm mostly talking to myself here. When I see these people have these answers of, that are so counter to what all the other people are thinking, I can't help but think, oh, that person either A, doesn't have all the information, or B, can't even take in all the other information. They're just sort of staunchly in this place of protecting themselves against whatever they perceive as the danger that's right in front of them. So this is one of those rare instances where I'm like, I don't really know what to do about it. But here's my word of advice. But I don't really know what to do about it because I feel like this is not just a like people battle. This is like a systems and organizational level battle that is going to take more than just me on this little show and you guys listening to this little show to solve and fix. However, I do think there are things we can do. I do think there are things we can do in our own space to help with more curiosity, to help with that contemplation, to help feel more comfortable in the gray. And the first thing is really just to notice your responses. So again, I say, like, when I watch this guy on the news, my first response is anger. I'm like, I say frustrated, but it doesn't feel like a strong enough word. I'm like angry at him for being this way. And then I'm angry at the news people for showing me him. And I'm angry at whoever's responsible for perpetuating this story. And notice that none of those things that I'm angry at are actually the problem. The problem is the fact that anybody needs to be there to begin with. That we're like holding people for no reason. We're treating them like animals, quite frankly, worse than animals in some cases. This is all fueled by hate and and rage of a political party. I don't even know if you want to call them a party, but like a collection of politicians that decided they needed things to go the way they wanted, which is like just white men and nobody else. I don't even get to that level until I've already gone like 3 levels of angry at what's right in front of me. So step one for us to kind of undo this thing is to stop focusing our anger and our rage and our frustration at the individual that we're seeing, unless that individual happens to be the person in charge of the political party. But like, I think my daughter said on one of the shows we were doing, like, as long as we're fighting each other, they can continue doing what they're doing because we're too distracted to fight them. And I can't help but think that in this case too. Curiosity is a privilege of safety, and we can do things to make ourselves feel more safe in these situations. And first and foremost is to notice who we're actually aiming the anger at. And is it justified at that person or that small business or that school group or whatever? Or is the problem really starting at a level much higher than those individuals or small groups? And if so, then collectively, what can we do to combat that? So that's step one. Sort of notice where your initial feelings are aimed, and then question your own self about like, oh, is this in the wrong place? Like, I don't really hate that guy from New Jersey. I don't. I hate the reason that he feels like he needs to be there, and I hate the information he has that he thinks is true. But I don't hate him. He's probably got a lot of justified reasons for feeling the way he feels. That's step one. And I might rescind that. He might not have any justified reasons for feeling the way he feels other than he's been given wrong information. But I don't want to get into that. I have no reason to hate that guy. And yet I was real angry when I heard him talking. And so I need to examine like, okay, well, where actually should that be aimed? And what can I do about it? And then the second thing is get out of your house and off your phone and out of the internet. And I use the internet as like this sort of global space that we exist. So whatever app is your app of choice, whatever publication is your publication of choice, whatever, streamed show or streamed media that you're watching, like get out of it as frequently as possible and go and speak and interact and be around real people. Because I think, at least my experience has been, the world is actually this country is a much better place than we are led to believe from the internet. Meaning there are more people who disagree with that guy than there are who agree with him. But you might never know that because the angry, uninformed voices are louder. But if you get out into the world and you see people being neighbors and interacting well and playing with their kids and their dogs and going to soccer games and, that kind of thing, being fans at a sporting event, that can be a very helpful reset and reminder that actually there's a lot more good out here than we are led to believe on an average basis. And that hope that comes from that is a really powerful tool. And certainly it's the wonder that you need in the weeds of all of this lack of curiosity and lack of nuance. Is the wonder in that is the hope of people who are still curious and are still doing the work and are still bringing facts to fights and fighting for the right things and the right people. So that's all I got on that. It's a heavy topic. It's a tough topic. And I feel like I'm always trying to find the good in everyone, not everything, but everyone. And it makes me a little sad and heartbroken that recently I've realized there's people who not only am I not gonna find the good, but like I should stop trying. It's not worth anybody's time to try to find the good in them. Now I just sort of go, oh, I wonder who hurt that person because they are how they are, because they were hurt at some point. Okay, that's what I got. Turn off your phones, get out in the world and talk to real people. And then please just stay curious. Notice if you're deciding and being judgmental right away, why? What's going on for you? What are you afraid of? What do you think the danger is in that moment? And what do you think you need to protect yourself from? And then if the answer to those things is like, oh, it's actually nothing, it's something old that feels like this, but this isn't really the situation that I'm in, it's just frustrating and annoying. Okay, then how do you turn that energy into doing something about it? Managing that managing that thing that shuts you down and opening yourself up for the curiosity to come. Okay, I only have one thing this week for reading, watching, listening to, because I've been out a lot. It's nice. It's nice weather where I am finally, so I haven't been doing a lot of reading a lot of watching or listening to, but I still read at night pretty much before I go to bed every night. But also, I was in Colorado last week, 2 weeks ago. I don't know when, earlier than this show, I was in Colorado, and we went to a bookstore because when I travel with my kids, that's what we do. They find bookstores in every town we go to. And they, sure enough, they found one in downtown Boulder, which was a really great bookstore. But in that bookstore, I almost never buy books anymore because I buy everything on an e-reader. I read everything on an e-reader because I'm old and it's just easier to hold. It's easier to read. I can make the font gigantic. It's good. But I very rarely buy, which is hilarious. I'm about to say I very rarely buy books. And if you're watching this, you're looking at just shelves and shelves and shelves of books. I still buy an occasional book. And also I have in the course of my lifetime bought libraries full of books. But recently, mostly what I buy is on an e-reader, except when I find something and I'm holding it because, it's that good. Oh, I just did the I'm gonna do it for you in the mic. I just did the influencer thing of tapping my nails on it. Sorry, that was totally involuntary. Anyway, the book is called Your Heart Was Made for This by Oren J. Sofer, I think is how you say the last name. And it also says the author of Say What You Mean, which I'm now really curious about because that feels like a book right up my alley. Say What You Mean. But this book is called Your Heart Was Made for This, and the subtitle sort of perfectly summarizes what it is. Contemplative practices for meeting a world in crisis with courage, integrity, and love. And my little empathetic, tortured therapist heart saw this and was like, I don't even have to open this book to know that I need it right now. And it's a recent book, so it really is the time of a world in crisis. And it's just, every chapter is like a little bit about whatever. So if the topic is courage, it's a little story about, their life in courage. If it's wisdom, it's their life. But then it'll give you like I hate to say contemplative practice because that makes it sound really intense and heavy, and it's really not. It's like how to walk through your life in a mindful way that helps you focus on the things that are going to help rather than harm. How to focus on the wonder in the weeds, quite frankly, is what this book is about. I had one of those moments in the bookstore where I was like, well, I could have written this book. Only in theory, not really, not in reality. But in theory, I was like, oh, this is what I talk about all the time. And I feel like it's good for me because it forces me to practice what I preach and do the things that I want to do. So I've just been reading like a little bit every day, which is hard for me. I'm I'm a consumer of books. So it's been really practice for me to challenge myself to read a bit at a time and then do one of the practices that it suggests at a time. And it has been really good. Again, my whole philosophy is focusing on, wonder and awe in a world full of chaos. And so the fact that this book actually gives me the tools to do it and reminds me every day to do it as a matter of reading it is really good. Again, it's called Your Heart Was Made for This: Contemplative Practices for Meeting a World in Crisis with Courage, Integrity, and Love by Oren J. Sofer, OrenJSofer, author of Say What You Mean. So that's what I'm reading right now. I'll keep you posted if any good nuggets come from it. I'll share those in future episodes. Just a reminder that we have moved everything over to Substack, including the Women of Wonder group. We have weekly sort of chats over there. If you are a free subscriber, you will get my, essentially they're blog posts. I write about sort of what's happening in my world. And also I'll write another reflection on, I basically do like a reflection on the show theme that week. So it's sort of like, oh, I listened to it back after I did it. I listened to it back and here's what else I'm thinking. So those are two things you get with free membership. And if you do a paid membership as a member of the Women of Wonder community, you get weekly chats, which have us sort of sharing, I don't know how to describe it. Like they're like prompts, not writing prompts necessarily, but prompts to sort of get you focused and thinking on things that maybe you don't in your day-to-day life or like in the busyness of day-to-day life. It's sort of a moment to stop and be like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. Or I would never have like focused on this thing. And so I try to keep them, I try to keep them I don't want to say light, but not like, it's not therapy. And it's not meant to be really heavy, but it is meant to be a little bit insightful, like get you sort of tuning into your own self and how you're feeling and what you're feeling and what you want to do with it. So those are weekly, every Monday. We have those in the chat section. And then we try to do a monthly Zoom call with one another to sort of catch up and just offer that support and connection that we're all sort of starving for all the time. I know I was when I started the group, and I really love getting their perspective on the world too. So that is a paid membership. So if you go to Substack, you can just sign up as a free member and get some writing from me. And if you want more of the in-depth community features of it, then there are paid memberships as well. And it's really just enough to like keep things going. It's not like I'm, getting rich off Substack. I'm just trying to keep all the apps in place that I need in order to make all this stuff happen. So that's all. If nothing else, go ahead over and give it a listen and subscribe for free. And please share with your friends, because the more people who can be in the weeds with us, the more wonder we're going to find. All right. Thanks again. Take care.